Hello, and you are very welcome to the social media news show in association with Content Cal. It's that time of the month where Andy Lambert brings you everything that has been happening in the world of social media over the past 30 days. Andy, how's it going today?
Good, thank you. Yes, another very busy month. So as you can see, it's having its effect on my hairline, the amount of changes happening in social and keeping up with it all. But yeah, lots going on, particularly on Facebook and Instagram. So very excited to go through it.
Well, as always, you do us all a massive service by doing the groundwork and collating all of the information. And I just want to say to those who are listening, or if you come in later, make sure that you ping your questions in chat. And I know I'll be putting my questions to Andy when he gets to the end. But there's some great news, as you said, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. I've been having a look at it before we get started, but I'll hand over to you so you could go ahead and share your screen.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Well, let's just get going and start showing my screen. So yeah, as a tiny little bit of background, I'm Andy. I'm one of the founders of a company called Content Cal. It's a content marketing platform, but that's all I'm going to share about that today. Whereas this session is going to be jam-packed, probably about half an hour in length, where we're going to fly through all of the updates that you need to know from the world of social. So basically, the idea is at the end of the next 30 minutes, you'll consider yourself up to date with everything that's happened throughout the month of June. And, you know, last year and this year have just been crazy in the way that these social media platforms have responded to economic climates, you know, situational climates that we're all been facing to adjust their platforms and their directions. So whilst some of the features specifically that I'll be going through today might not necessarily be relevant for you, being public sector focused predominantly, what it does do is help us tell a really interesting story and help us understand potentially the trajectory that some of these platforms are headed in, which is very interesting for how we plan our future strategies. And before we go into it, the thing I always say at the start of all of these sessions is like, yes, there's a load of stuff I will go through right now, but fundamentally what we're not saying is that you need to do all of these things. The idea here is to give ourselves enough context, perspective on what's happening in the world of social so that we can make our own right decisions about what we need to do. I'd always recommend doing fewer things better than doing lots of things badly. But hopefully this is all about education. Cool, let's go into it. Let's start with some data and the updated usage league table. We like to look at this as much as we possibly can. This is latest data. It's only about a week old. So Facebook's still reigning supreme. Monthly active users is the data point that I like more than any other, personally, because as the name suggests, these are people that come back every 30 days. So really, this is a addressable audience for us. Even better, the people that are there every day, because that's really our daily opportunity if we have a very like a daily posting frequency. YouTube still absolutely massive. I've seen these numbers ranked as higher than this, but according to YouTube, it's still 2 billion monthly active. I think the bit about YouTube that's always very interesting is that these are people that watch YouTube with their own YouTube account and signed in. Of course, you don't actually need to watch YouTube as signed in. So the actual total number of users is much higher, probably higher than Facebook. Instagram's growth is kind of plateauing a bit. Doesn't mean it's shrinking at all, but 1 billion monthly active users, utterly massive. TikTok growth trajectory continues. Just 3 months ago, they were at 600,000. So a massive jump in monthly active users. So very much Instagram is looking over its shoulder at TikTok at the moment. A few platforms, Douyin, Qzone, Weibo, you won't necessarily recognize them. We're not native to the Western world. So we'll gloss over those. Pinterest growth is significant. We talk about it fairly regularly. Pinterest is a platform not hugely relevant for everyone on this session, but definitely an interesting one to watch because they're always ahead of the curve and the bleeding edge of the world of social. And as you'll see from some of the Facebook updates, Facebook, Instagram look to platforms often like Pinterest and Snapchat as to the ones that are really pushing the future of social. Snapchat is another one to call out very quickly. Their daily active users are phenomenal when you consider it as a percentage of their overall monthly active users. Activity on Snapchat is phenomenal. We stopped talking about Snapchat as an industry for a while because there wasn't enough bad negative media to talk about. So actually, there's a lot of positive stories coming out of Snapchat and the growth therein. So it's definitely a platform when we want to focus on reaching younger audiences, it should absolutely be part of a strategy. LinkedIn is something that we always talk about. LinkedIn's very frustrating in that it never publishes monthly active or daily active, sadly. So we're just stuck with registered users, which have grown substantially, but really what use is a registered user if they don't come in at least every month to consume content? So yeah, a bit of a shame on that one, but this gives us a guide as to where the audiences are. So with that data, let's talk about what's new, and let's start with Facebook. Once again, Facebook are making some good thing about closing in on those that share misinformation. So the Facebook fact checkers, both human and automated, are kind of kicking into overdrive, that if someone tries to follow a page that has repeatedly shared false information, Facebook will warn about that. So really good update around making sure that people are sharing correct information, and Facebook's fact checkers working well. Really interesting thing about Reels is that Reels hasn't seen the rocket ship growth that Instagram was hoping for. And now I haven't actually seen any data to prove that fact, but this action is a good demonstration of that, because the fact is they're trying to expand the usage of Reels. So they're actually using their bigger platform, Facebook, to help promote it. So you're going to start to see Reels in Facebook and have an ability to create within Facebook. So this is rolling out to everyone. But once again, I mean, this is actually quite a good thing for us to think about, regardless of the sector that we work in, is that now when we create Reels, we can start thinking about, actually, we can utilize both platforms, Instagram and Facebook, to start promoting those Reels and driving exposure on our content. Really important thing there. Another really important thing, because there are 7 million active groups on Facebook. Groups are a core part of Facebook's growth strategy, and as a result, they're rolling out new group admin tools. I won't go through all of them, but there are a lot around more like controlling the flow of conversation, being able to moderate better. One of the kind of key highlights of that is the ability to slow down conversations. So if things are starting to get a bit heated, lots of comments flying in, you can actually delay people's posting, which would be really useful for admins to actually be able to keep up with what's going on. But just the message here, though, the important thing is that Facebook are continuing to invest heavily on groups. They still see that as one of the core features. That's the future of the platform. So that's good for us to know. Big news, Facebook launched audio rooms, which is their competitor to Clubhouse. You'll hear me say that sentence a few times, so apologies in advance, because everyone wants to have their own Clubhouse clone. So audio rooms is Facebook's approach. And you can see how much Facebook are weighting this, because you'll see right at the top of that Facebook feed, you'll see the audio rooms being promoted. So really front and center, goes to show how much more emphasis Facebook are putting on this feature. The rest of how it all works, very similar. If anyone wants to use Clubhouse, people can join an audio only session, can put their hand up to request to go on stage, ask questions, have that level of interaction. The key point where I think Facebook have taken a really positive step above and beyond all of the other platforms that are doing this kind of audio first social, is that rather than just allowing anyone just to start an audio room and chuck it in their feed and hope people discover it, what they're doing now is actually only launching audio rooms to groups and influential individuals. Basically, what that means, they want to launch it to people that have a community ready built, that they can use this to help encourage deeper interaction in a community. And for me, that is a masterstroke, because the biggest challenge that Clubhouse has found in its growth is around discovery. How do you join an audio room of a person that you don't know? I know I'd want to join Joanne's audio room because I know, like, and trust her and the content is good. But joining someone you don't know and investing your time in that is a difficult decision to make. So actually putting it in communities or with individuals where the trust and authenticity is already built, that is a really important step. So once again, highlighting the importance of those Facebook groups. So for anyone, this is another audio first feature. For anyone that has a podcast, this is a really significant update, because now Facebook are really encouraging the promotion of podcasts. So you can listen to podcasts in a feed. So no longer is promotion of your podcast like, hey, I've done a podcast, go check it out on iTunes, chuck a link in. It's now a case of actually you can have your podcast playing in stream and people can listen to it whilst they're still within Facebook. So that's a big update there. Now, there's a lot going on around e-commerce. Now, I'm cognizant of like this not being of a high priority to necessarily everyone in this call when we're talking about e-commerce. But this, like I said, sets a really interesting precedent for where Facebook's going, where social media in general, and where social media is headed is to try and drive more monetization out of e-commerce, or social commerce as it's often called, and through creators, of which we're going to talk about in a second. But yeah, Facebook pushing into e-commerce, using WhatsApp heavily for that. So Facebook shops coming to WhatsApp, really nice integration. So it allows people to kind of interact with a merchant, a store, being able to view their shop directly within WhatsApp and make purchases. So considering WhatsApp's reach, that's a significant update. Launching augmented reality ads. This has been a staple of Snapchat and Pinterest over the last year. So people can look and shop products and try on those products in the feed, and then then they can buy those products. So from makeup to clothing, etc. Augmented reality is starting to play an increasingly significant role in the way that social works. Same as like Facebook Marketplace, which typically has been kind of P2P or peer-to-peer shopping, for example, like buying and selling. Now it's going to be a case of shops are coming to Marketplace to give that much more of a kind of retail B2C orientated approach. And the final thing they're doing for pushing into e-commerce is visual search, which is the same as Pinterest Lens, allowing anyone to look at a product that potentially hasn't been tagged in their feed, tap on it, and it will show products that were similar to that. So this is significant around discovery, and this is what all of these social platforms are big into. We'll touch on this briefly with Pinterest as well, but this is the direction they're all headed, because they want to be the place where people go to firstly discover new products, gain inspiration, and then make the purchase. As far as I can see, the main platform all of these social networks are going after is Amazon. They want this share of the social commerce because they want to reduce their reliance on ads as a way to fund both all of their business models. And that does, from a macro level, mean really good things for us, because then it returns back to, when I say it returns, I mean social media returns back to quality organic content as well, being a primary focus. Might be wishful thinking on my part, but we'll see if it plays out. Onto Insta. This is a really important one for all of us. Anyone that does live on Insta or does Reels, insights are now live. So you can look at both your post level insights, as I'm hovering over on the left hand side, and you can look at your account level insights. So this is brand new data points. So if you're doing that, I mean doing Reels or live broadcasts, then this will be important for you. Once again, an e-commerce feature. Anyone that's launching a new product that is available to buy, this is what the drops feature is. Allows people to discover new products that they can purchase. Hiding like counts is now available on Instagram and Facebook. So this is now our choice whether we want to hide our like counts. So they've been working on this for a while. Now it's fully rolled out. So this is now an option that you all have. Launching multi-brand partnerships. This is important because it allows for kind of collaboration when it comes to building your content. So this is a popular type of post that you'll see from brand partnerships on Instagram. So what this means is, like, if you chose as a brand to work with a certain individual, influencer for argument's sake, to kind of represent your brand message, it would show at the top that it's been in partnership with your business. But now you can have multiple businesses that you're in partnership with. That extends the reach, it encourages and opens up the opportunity for more collaboration. And then we move on to creators. It was Instagram Creator Week the week before last. So naturally they were rolling out a whole new load of features that were targeting creators. So the creator economy is something you will have heard lots of. And this really is, from a macro level, a really important thing. So just to kind of set the scene here, whilst these features that I'm about to show you, these 3 features, won't necessarily impact your business from a public sector perspective, but what it will do is impact the people that are using social media and help you think about who could you potentially work with when you're talking about amplifying your message. Because the more attractive that Instagram, Facebook, and all the platforms make social media for creators, the more people there are on the platform creating great content, and the more people creating great content and building communities, the more people we can start to work with as part of our organization to help tap into the communities that these creators have created. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I'm saying creator a lot. Anyway, what we've done here, or what Instagram have done, have launched the affiliate program, which allows any creator, if they like a brand and they see value in it, they're able to start sharing affiliate links, so they can get recognized from a monetary perspective when other people purchase through their links. So this has a net effect of bringing more creators to the platform, because there's more ways these creators can make money. Then on that basis, because creators, these individuals that have built businesses just on the content they've created and their personal brands, it's now getting to a point where these creators are starting their own merchandise lines and now have a need for their own shops. Goes to show this creator economy is just fascinating, right? Because, it allows businesses to be set up just on Instagram, and just using, your own personality has created a business. And this now, as I said, brings more people to the platform and gives us more people to work with. So creator shops are another way that creators can make money. And also Facebook, through these stars challenges, basically they're incentivizing these creators to create X amount of content, gain this amount of followers, setting incentives and benchmarks to encourage these creators to get to start winning financial rewards. They call it stars challenges, but fundamentally it manifests as cash. So this now really gives a great opportunity and incentive to bring more creators to the platform, more communities get created, and as a result gives us as organizations more people we can work with in collaboration to help our content go further. And that's the real kind of upside. Now, for any non-profits on this call, and for anyone that's operating in either the third sector or has an organization they want to support, this is brilliant, game-changing, I would say. So you can now start organizing group fundraisers directly on Instagram, the same way that you might have done through like GoFundMe, or there's a myriad of other, like giving sites, fundraising sites is probably a better way to explain it. But now you can do this directly on Instagram. And as you can see like totals, you can get people to donate directly in that. So, this is where the kind of monetization commerce thing really starts to impact the non-profit sector, which is really significant. So love that update. Probably the most obvious update, as you would expect, as Reels starts to gain momentum, they've now rolled out the ability to run ads in Reels, if that's ever a thing that anyone wants to do. And also another significant thing when it comes to discovery of our content and improving the discovery of our content. Instagram have been testing this for a while. That you might have seen it when you're on Instagram and you're scrolling down the top the feed, you'll get to the bottom of it and it says you're all caught up, no more posts. Here's some suggested posts from others. So finding others based on what you've engaged with, finding other content that you can follow and other accounts to follow. But now they're kind of embedding these suggested posts in your feed. So rather than having them all at the bottom, kind of like intersplicing your feed with that. You might have seen this already a little bit as you're scrolling through, but this is a great way to help bolster our discovery of our content. So lots covered within the first two networks. Gets a bit quicker here because some of the other networks haven't been quite as busy. LinkedIn is the one that hasn't been as busy. So just a simple update when it comes to ads. You can now boost your organic content. Boosting will be something that we're all inherently familiar with on Facebook. But now if something's performed reasonably well organically, we can now put some money behind that to extend that further. So that's a good update. And also they're launching, or they have launched rather, is specific event ads as well. So that is what it says on the tin. So if you're running events, marketing them on LinkedIn is a great way to market events. We do here at Content Cal, we see good results for marketing our events on LinkedIn. And if we want to put some ads so we can target that and push it further and wider, always a good opportunity. Now, Twitter, they have been busy. So once again, Audio Spaces, their Clubhouse competitor, that sentence again, but they're now rolling this out to the web app, which I think is a really important one for accessibility. And it also means that, let's take, for example, something that we're personally doing. We're starting our podcast again as of next month. So we're both recording the podcast and broadcasting it live onto Audio Spaces, which really helps like maximize the reach of our content. So we can both record and broadcast at the same time. So that's a really nice way to encourage interaction as well, whilst you're creating that content. So that's, definitely welcome that update. Audio Spaces is going to become significantly important, and the significance behind the platform is going to increase. So as you can see from these designs here, so this isn't live yet, but this is where they're working towards having audio spaces live front and center in the mobile app, which actually then becomes a central call to action in Twitter. So it gives you an idea of how much Twitter are putting into audio spaces. So my kind of recommendation here is that it's a new feature from Twitter. If audio first content feels like the right approach for you, this might be a good time just to start investigating this one, especially if you have a Twitter audience at the moment. Just as a side note, audio spaces is only available if you have more than 600 followers. So if you're not on Twitter right now, you can probably disregard this for a second, but if you've got some followers already, might be worthwhile investigating. Loads of updates for audio spaces as well. So last month they allowed you to schedule them. Now you can edit your scheduled spaces. It's just so much stuff coming to it. But a very interesting side note here is that Twitter Blue has launched, which is Twitter's subscription platform. So people can start subscribing to Twitter if, you know, they're how Twitter describe a power user. So this allows users of Twitter to pay $3.49 a month and be able to get certain things that others don't have access to, which is dedicated support from Twitter, the ability to make collections, the ability to edit a tweet, or kind of not full editing, but they can kind of recall a tweet if they want to, which no one else can. So it's those people that regularly use Twitter now get a chance to you get some of the features that they want to have access to. Also kind of displays differently in their feed as to who's a subscriber. So it's a nice kind of thing where you feel like I'm a bit special because I'm a subscriber to Twitter. So that is the first time I've seen a social media network have a subscription offering outside of YouTube, which is slightly different. So I'm fascinated to see the take up of this, because it potentially sets a new precedent for the world of social in a reduced ads, more kind of engaged content community type of offering. So as I said, there's a lot of interesting macro shifts going on here. Talking about smaller communities, their newsletter subscription option is now live. So if anyone's running a newsletter, which you can now do on Twitter, you can do this today. Fantastic way to get like permanent subscribers. And I think this is a really important update to note, is that this kind of sets a new precedent for social, in the sense that you might have 1,000 followers, but really there'll only be a proportion of those that truly engage with your content and are interested in your content. So having a newsletter subscription directly within Twitter allows you to have a closer knit community, because let's say you had 1,000 followers, but 500 of them then subscribe to your newsletter. That means every time you put out your newsletter every week, for example, all 500 people will see that newsletter, rather than it being up to Twitter as to who's going to see your message. It's a great way of having a smaller, close-knit community with a tighter relationship. I like that idea. Audio spaces can now be downloaded. Really important thing, because if you're creating content, you want to make sure you can maximize that as much as possible. So now you can download the transcript of this as well as the recording, so you can repurpose this in multiple different ways. Significant. Then Twitter opening applications for ticketed spaces. So for those kind of big accounts that want to have more exclusive events, so ticketed spaces are open, and super follows as well. So allowing people to subscribe just to get access to your content. So this is only available for people with 10,000 followers and above, but it just once again shows this whole kind of focus on monetization of a platform beyond ads. And it's really nice to see, you know, some fresh forward thinking from these social platforms, rather than create something and sell ads in. So this actually is going to change the dynamic of how social works. But another kind of small update here is Twitter's allowing tweets to be shared to stories. Really simple. Lots of people share tweets as stories, and now Twitter are now allowing that through the iOS app to share a tweet to a story. Great for cross-posting, great for repurposing content and extending your reach across multiple platforms. So I'm going to whiz through Pinterest, just doing a quick time check, whiz through Pinterest, because a lot of the stuff that they've done are very similar to Facebook. So rolling out more shops, giving people the ability to create shopping lists, to create a curated list of inspiration of content that they've seen, and giving people more curated suggestions of content, and so not content, of products they might like to get. So, you know, Pinterest and Facebook very much heading into this e-commerce world. And actually, just last week, Pinterest came out and said, we don't want to be known as a social network anymore. So that might be the case. They still very much will be recognized as one, but just goes to show the focus in that, they're not thinking so much about, having a platform where people consume content of which we sell ads into. Is actually more about creating a commercial experience, a very rich experience for their consumers. This one, I'm disappointed to see I haven't got this yet, so I'm interested to know whether anyone else has this if you use YouTube. Shorts is their competitor to TikTok, which is launched in the US and is doing well, and it should have been coming to the United Kingdom, but not here yet. Well, certainly not for me anyway. But this will be a significant update. So short stories, and it takes YouTube, using the massive audience they have, takes them into a much more kind of social media setting. So I'm excited about that one. Couple of things on TikTok. You can now run live events that you could already, but now you can schedule those live events. So simple. We've seen this on all other platforms, but now TikTok are doing this. But I probably think more importantly is an update from TikTok this month has been the launch of their Behind the Business series for SMEs. So for any organization that's not quite found their groove with TikTok yet, and I put myself into that category, this series gives a load of case studies, examples, businesses that are, not your Nike and Adidas of this world, but normal businesses that have done well on TikTok and examples of what they've done. So I definitely implore you to go check that out. TikTok are also incredibly forward thinking when it comes to how they embed calls to action in this. So they've launched this thing called Jumps, which is really interesting. And it's definitely something that I think we should think about if we're considering TikTok for our organizations. Because if you think about it, in typical social media land, your calls to action are typically like, oh, I'll put a link in a comment, like go check it out here or register here or whatever. It's quite dated in terms of that. And it also creates quite a fractured experience for someone who's on social media because they're browsing Instagram, for example, or LinkedIn because they want to be on LinkedIn to have a browse. What you're asking someone to do as they scroll through is click into your post and then click away from that and go somewhere else, right? I mean, as a business, that's what we want people to do. But as a user, that's not good. And for that reason, that's why we've seen, all of the social media platforms downrating any posts that have links in them, right? We know that link posts don't do as well as an image post, a carousel, or a video. However, what TikTok are talking about here, these jumps allow us, it's a really small screenshot, so massive apologies, but where I'm hovering my mouse here, it's kind of like embedded calls to action within the content. So in this instance, this is a video about making of a certain recipe, and this is a link to the recipe, but rather than like linking to the recipe somewhere in the comments of the post and us going onto a different website, it actually just brings up the recipe directly within TikTok. So it allows people to engage deeper in your content, take some actions, and not leave the platform. And that's what I love about TikTok. They're kind of pushing the boundaries with this and starting to really think about what social means for businesses and consumers. So they're kind of doing that balance between like, we know that businesses need a call to action and do something, but we also know our users should stay on the platform longer. And this is a really nice middle ground. Long explanation, but I think it's an important one. Clubhouse, not much to say other than they released their Android app last month and it's now used by 2 million people. Sounds a lot, but in the context of the other platforms, it's square root of naffle. So we shall see what happens with Clubhouse. I don't feel that confident about that as a platform. It feels like they're getting a bit beaten up by the big boys at the moment, as they've all now rolled out their Clubhouse competitors. So yeah, I feel for them a bit. Small one about Reddit. Reddit's been with us for many years, but it has started to really grow and have a massive resurgence. As we know, Reddit has been very much a forum-driven type of approach. And, me personally, I don't really post anything on Reddit. I just use Reddit as a great way of getting inspiration of a certain topic. All these subreddits really are just kind of like forums, if you will. But now Reddit has seen a lot of growth and they've started to push more into social and a more typical social media oriented experience. So this kind of TikTok style interface is what it looks like now. Sorry for the wonky screenshot. That's all I could manage because there wasn't much online about it. So But yeah, interesting one. And I think Reddit does have some applicability for all businesses. So definitely one to think about. Finally, let's go on to the last one. What's Spotify doing on a social media presentation? It's because they have launched their Clubhouse competitor. Promise, that's the final time I'm going to say that sentence. But yeah, they've launched this thing called Greenroom, which is like all of the other platforms, Clubhouse, Twitter audio spaces, Facebook audio rooms, Instagram rooms, all the same kind of functionality exists. I'm kind of in two minds about this, because on one side of it, you're like, this makes sense because Spotify being the core place where people go get their podcast from, this allows, the extension of a podcast into a more interactive one. Let's say we are following, Joe Rogan's podcast and we listen to that, whenever we want. But also maybe let's assume that Joe Rogan's going to do a live Q&A. That could be really nice and interactive to join in with. But then there's the other side of my thinking about this where I'm like, the typical user of Spotify uses it and consumes a content on their terms, on demand. Whereas, it's a very different user behavior to expect someone to go onto a platform to consume something that is live right now. So interested to see what happens with that. Very interested. But either way, everyone's played their hand now in terms of their Clubhouse rivals, the audio first. So it's now understanding who's gonna win that. And that really kind of sums up where we're at for the end of this month. Audio first is here to stay, but now the battle is commencing because everyone's kind of played their hand. They're all in the field. Interesting to see what happens. I would possibly be circumspect in terms of where I'd be if I was looking at this as a content format, be a bit circumspect as to what platforms are going to grow the most. Twitter is one that I'm favoring at the moment, but Facebook's approach in groups does look really good. So those two would be my preferred approaches. And the second kind of theme out of this is all around kind of e-commerce / monetization, huge part of social. That really is a trajectory. And I think in the fullness of time, this is going to take us towards an ad-less future, or a reduced ads future if we're realistic. And then thirdly, which is possibly most interesting, I think, for all of us, is the emergence of this creator economy and how this is, bringing to life smaller knit communities linked to certain individuals. And I think that's really where brands and organizations will start to see biggest growth in more partnerships with more folk to help tap into those communities rather than necessarily building communities around our own brand. Not that will disappear, but those creators will be a significant part of helping us raise our awareness. So with that, we are done.
Andy, thank you. You know what? The language even used in today's show really reflects the trajectory and the evolution of social media. So I was just taking some notes. We had jumps, we had drops, shorts, Greenroom. I mean, these are all language of the current time. And for those of us who are in the world of social media, we know it moves fast. But I think in the last year, there's been a massive shift in what social media is. It's not like broadcasting content anymore. You have to work harder for your reach. You have to work doubly hard for your engagement, but you have to be so creative. I don't think there's anywhere to hide now if you're not a creative social media manager. Would you agree?
I would agree. And yeah, to that point, I always kind of defer back to working with others, because even if you're not creative and it makes you feel anxious to go, oh wow, how am I going to do TikTok, for example? Like, I can put myself into the category. I spend my life talking about social media. Am I going to go on TikTok? Do I have anything interesting to say? Hell no. So I would rather work with people that are native to the platform, that have already built communities, and work with them, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean giving them X amounts of pounds to post about us, euros, whatever. It's actually more of a case of, is there some collaboration we can do here? Is there some shared interest, how we can work together? And I think that is for me is a big mindset shift when it comes to social thing, not just thinking about the stuff we're putting on our own channels, which is still important, but thinking about how we think about our earned channels as well, and how we kind of expand that reach. And I think that's a mindset shift, to be honest.
Yeah, and if we think about our public sector audience who are so nervous about partnering with influencers, that requires a mindset shift. And maybe it's creators that they're looking to partner with, people who can create original content that can blow up on TikTok or on Reels, or, you know, lead a really prominent conversation on Spaces. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think we need to be doing more together as opposed to in isolation. Just a little bit what we're doing here, right?
That's exactly what it's exactly what we're doing right now. We have shared interests, we have similar values, we're working together. And yeah, maybe it's just a terminology shift to think less about influencers but more about creators, because influencers does conjure up negative connotations that we've seen in the press, right? Because we only hear about influencers where things have gone south, you know, where, you know, we're poking fun at someone or something's gone wrong. But actually, you know, we just want to find other like-minded, interesting people to work with. And what the social media platforms are doing are trying to encourage more and more people to their platform that have that interesting creative spark that we can work with. And that creates a lovely natural diversity to our content. It's so hard to us think about new stuff all the time and have a different take on stuff. But if we work with more people, our content becomes more diverse as a natural byproduct.
Yeah, and just Eva says it's thanks for all the updates. So yeah, thanks to Andy who's done all the work. Rob says edit a tweet, hallelujah. But Rob, I've got a question back for you. Are you going to pay €2.99 for it? And of course, it's to recall the tweet. But is it worth it? Let's see how many that they take up. So Andy, to your earlier point, this subscription model, which is very interesting from Twitter, it is different from YouTube, as you said, because we can just get rid of ads there and have uninterrupted video content. I'll be interested to see if the others follow suit. And I'm sure Twitter's competitors are going to keep a close eye on the sub numbers. But one thing I'll say about it is that, like, I subscribe for news. I pay for online news. I pay for Spotify. I pay for Netflix. The generation coming behind us are all spending their money on digital products. Their timing could be right.
Yeah, it could well be. I guess the question is how many subscriptions can one person tolerate in their life? But yeah, I think the timing is good. There's an interesting thing I've obviously just noticed, the subtext in what Facebook was saying in what they put out. I think it was earlier last month, where this whole iOS 14.5 update happened, you know, which meant that only 3% of people have opted in to have their ads tracked, for them to be tracked, just 3%. And Facebook have started to flash up a message, which you see occasionally. It's like, you know, help us keep Facebook free forever, which is a like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, probably going to make you pay if you don't opt in. So it's there's a big kind of tension that's happening between ads versus subscription stuff. But like, I reckon if you took a poll of some people to go, would you rather just get good content from people that you follow and have no ads at all? You imagine the amount of people that go, yeah, please, I would sign up to that. All depends, however, though, if I want to spend, you know, $3 a month on every social media network, who knows? So basically fascinating. I don't know what the answer will be, but it's fun kind of predicting what might happen over the coming year, because it's going to be a very transformative year this year.
Yeah, and I think the social networks are worried about where privacy is going, and that sweet spot between personalization of content and privacy. And then we've had the Apple iOS 14 update, which reduces the visibility of ads. So they're really worrying about where their dollars and their new revenue streams are going to come from. Eva has a question here. What's the difference between deleting and recalling a tweet? So if you're going to pay for it, what do you get? She's trying to see whether it's worth her while. It's a great question.
It is a good question. So in truth be told, I think I would probably direct you to look at Twitter Blue's subscription and see what that actually is. It's kind of like undoing a tweet, but I'm with you. It's like, I guess you can probably keep the analytics with it, would probably be the main thing. Obviously you delete it and start again. you're going to lose any data points with it. Whereas you kind of recall it and do it again. To be honest, I don't know because I haven't subscribed. So all I saw was this in their kind of messaging. So definitely probably want to look into more, I would say, Eva.
Yeah, but it's great. It's a great point. You know, if I can't edit my tweet, but I can recall it, you know, where's the value? Aileen's got another question. A great session. She says, do you know the demographics for the Facebook audience versus the YouTube audience? Now, obviously, Facebook is holding on to its user base in terms of, you know, who they are, but they're very broad on Facebook. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in here. Let me see. I'm going to put a link in here, and I'll put it on my own LinkedIn, Aileen. But I would defer you to the data reportal a study which Andy, you shared here. It's We Are Social and Hootsuite, and they do a brilliant country by country breakdown of all social network users, gender and age demographics, and you'll get it there. So it's datareportal.com, and I'll put the hyperlink into LinkedIn as well for you. But what would you say, Andy, about the audience difference between Facebook and YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was going to defer back to the same thing. I was actually just frantically looking through our previous session. I think it was 2 months ago where we did this session where we had this data. There's too much for me to say succinctly because it's, you know, talking about demographics of nearly 5 billion people. So you can't really put it that succinctly. But fundamentally, have a look at that report you mentioned, Joanne, is the perfect one. So short of me trying to find that slide in the deck quickly, I would just definitely direct you to that.
Yeah, I got it up. I got the link for her. Cool. Let's see, what else did I have on my notes? Voice we can't ignore. It really is becoming the year of speech content 2021. I mean, I am curious about Spotify's entry into this market for live conversation. I immediately thought about my podcasting opportunity. But again, it's a massive platform and you wonder about your own discoverability. Will it help my podcast get discovered a bit more? If I do lives, will the algorithm there be more favorable? Who knows? But if you're podcasting, it's definitely worth trying that out, I'd say, as well as Twitter Spaces now. You know, if you've got voice content and you want to be authoritative, go to the voice platforms because nothing beats hearing from somebody that's able to converse and engage in monologues, you know, in the moment.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely agree with that. Very sensible advice. I think, yeah. Spotify was always the second biggest driver of traffic to our podcast when we ran it regularly. So if that was the case still, and we're still running the same podcast, then Greenroom might well be something I'd experiment with on that basis.
I'm delighted to find out that we can now download our Twitter Spaces because that's just going to knock Clubhouse out of the water, I think, because if you take time to go live on Twitter and have conversation that's really rich and you never know who's going to show up. I mean, I just had an idea as you were going through that. You said that you were going to simultaneously broadcast your podcast and Twitter Spaces, whereas I had an idea of going, you know, sometimes during the week I have musings, you know, where you have an idea or you have a thought and you just love to say it to somebody, but you don't want to go live on video or live on, you know, on camera. But I'd probably pick up my phone and maybe go live on Twitter Spaces, but then I could repurpose that for Joanne's column in my podcast, right?
Exactly that. That's the beauty of it. It's like it is low production value, but like very honest format of communication. You know, nothing transmits emotion quite like the human voice. So, yeah, I think it's a really powerful tool, and there's a reason that all of the platforms have fallen over themselves to release their versions of it. And back on that Twitter Spaces thing, the accessibility thing is a really important point to note. Obviously, the transcript that happens, the download, as you mentioned, and also like the live closed captions that happen at the same time. Not always 100% accurate, safe to say, but for live closed captions, especially for people that you know, that didn't pick up something, that either slightly hard of hearing or whatever, you know, it's it really ramps up this inclusivity thing of content, which I think for any public sector org is a big focal point, I think.
Another great feature this month is the LinkedIn event ad that you can run, and also boosting posts. I think that might work well for them. I've been using LinkedIn ads for a number of years. The dashboard is not very intuitive. They are hugely expensive. Like, you're talking 5, 6, 7 times the cost of perhaps Facebook or Twitter. But of course, they've got the biggest people database in the world, and people disclose who they are, what they work in, and what content they like to consume on the back of it. But I really like the fact that we can now maybe just boost a post and also promote our events, because I know public sector love LinkedIn, and they have lots of events now online because in person has kind of been shelved for the past year and a half. Do you think there'll be a big uptake?
I should hope so, because I haven't started to run our first ad, so I don't know about costs. There's a business I know that's going to be running their first kind of campaign on events and boosting posts next week. So I'm really curious to see the results. I'm hoping it'll be more cost effective than the ads. Typically, it's sometimes hard to get them to work. But yeah, I love it. I love the idea of it. And yeah, events and LinkedIn have been, kind of a very nice natural fit. So yeah, any more opportunity that LinkedIn gives us, I'm always all ears. It's just a shame that they're always the most lethargic when it comes to new updates.
Yeah. Andy, what a whirlwind, as always. I think I always use that word, but that's just how I feel at the end of it. You've brought us all up to speed. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Is there anything big coming down the track, or do we just need to wait to the end of July to find out?
Actually, yeah, there's one thing I saw this morning that will go out into next week, is that Instagram have said that they are planning on rolling out a link sticker for stories, and not limiting it to 10 people with 10,000 followers. So that actually means, for the first time ever, you'll be able to link to something in the story as a call to action. So they're just testing at the moment, but the product manager in an interview I was reading this morning said this will be out. We are looking at rolling it out to everyone. So,
fingers crossed. Yeah. Us little Insta minions that don't have the 10,000 followers or the verification, are limited to what we can do with our link in bio. As always, Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. People can obviously watch the replay and ask questions, and we'll get back to them. But where can people find you and find Content Cal?
Yeah, so Content Cal is on contentcal.io. So you find us there, free trial, etc. You can find me mostly on LinkedIn. Just type Andy Lambert Content Cal and you'll find me. And that's probably the 2 best places.
Brilliant. Well, listen, we will see you on the last Tuesday of July, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks as always, and have a great week.
Thanks a lot. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.